With Dafran joining Season 2 of the Overwatch League, we already know that Atlanta is going to be one of the most popular teams and will have a massive fan base. And because of all of this, the question I received the most is, how good is Atlanta going to be in Season 2? Now, I can't exactly tell you what rank Atlanta is going to be in Season 2. Obviously, nobody can predict that, and also because they haven't finished picking up all of their players for Season 2. But the good news is that there is already 6 confirmed players that I can tell you will be joining Atlanta. And knowing this, there is definitely enough information about this team to decide whether or not they will be good next season and how good they can possibly be. So these 6 players have been confirmed by all my sources that they are set to join Atlanta. And let's go ahead and go over their names real quick and what teams they come from. And starting off with the big name that everybody already knows, Dafran is 100% confirmed to be joining Atlanta for Season 2. He's been out of the pro scene for a while. His last team was with Selfless over a year and a half ago. Alongside Dafran, we have Nalir from Last Night's Leftovers, who played in the previous season of North American Contenders as a DPS player. The next 2 players both come from Element Mystic, a Korean Contenders team. We have Dako, an off tank, and Pokpo, a main tank. Erster from Lucky Future Zenith, who plays on a Korean team in China Contenders and is also a DPS player. And then lastly, we have Kodak from European Contenders team Snakes. He is a flex support player, mostly known for his Zenyatta and Ana. He recently popped off hard at the World Cup Paris qualifier. So these are the 6 confirmed players. I'd say it's pretty well rounded. They are missing a main support, and instead of one of them, they have 3 DPS players. But I still think we can make a really good judgment off of these 6 players on how good Atlanta will be in the next season. So before I go more in depth about the players, where they come from, what tournaments they've played in, and just how good they are overall and how good they might be in Season 2, we'll first start off with the management of Atlanta. And we'll start out at the very top with the head coach, Sefi. Now, Sefi has a lot of experience in the Overwatch scene. He started out as the owner of Selfless Gaming, a widely successful organization all over esports with teams in CSGO, Overwatch, and other titles. He was always more so focused on his Overwatch team though, and eventually got them a gaming house, and this is when we saw the rise of Dafran and Sinatra and Selfless Gaming in North America Overwatch. They won 6 amateur tournaments in a row before moving on to the high professional tournaments, barely losing in the finals over and over again to Rogue. And then upon receiving an offer to head coach San Francisco Shock, he closed down Selfless Gaming and fully focused on Season 1 of the Overwatch League, and was the driving force behind building the Season 1 San Francisco Shock roster. He would then coach this team throughout most of the regular season, eventually being released in Stage 4 for favored ex-Boston Uprising head coach Krusty. This wouldn't be the end of Sefi coaching though. He decided he wanted to pursue this career, and he started coaching an amateur team called Last Night's Leftovers. He would coach this team through 2 seasons of Overwatch Contenders, and in the second season, Last Night's Leftovers would be the very first amateur team to come through trials to defeat academy teams and make it into the playoffs. With a wealth of experience when it comes to building rosters and coaching Overwatch League teams, the owner of the Overwatch League Atlanta spot saw Sefi as an easy pick for his head coach. And personally, I believe it was a really good selection. And of course, behind every head coach, there's gotta be a coaching staff. So let's move on to his assistant coach. We have Silence, and to be honest, there's not a lot of information out there about this guy. From what is publicly known, Silence was previously an analyst for Last Night's Leftovers under Sefi, which is presumably the reason why he was brought over to this roster. He must have done great work for Last Night's Leftovers, and that is the reason why Sefi wanted to bring him over as his assistant coach. And now moving on to their performance coach, we have Kasours. Kasours has an extensive Overwatch background, once competing on Team That's a Disband as a player in Season 1 of European Contenders, and also playing in many other tournaments with That's a Disband prior to Contender Season 1. After that though, he decided to move on to a coach for 1 point in Season 2 of European Contenders. In the season that Kasours coached 1 point, they got 5th through 8th place, making it to the playoffs, a pretty good showing. So Kasours has a solid background as a player and as a coach. And because of this, I definitely think he will be a good performance coach because he knows the mentality of a player and he also knows the mentality of a coach. And now moving on to the last coach, we have an analyst and his name is Danny. And this is honestly an extremely unique pickup because Danny is only 15 years old. And remember this, guys, you have to be 18 years old to be a player in the Overwatch League. I guess there's no coaching rule because he's 15 years old and he's an analyst for Team Atlanta. But that doesn't mean he's new to the scene. He's been around for a while and he's even been an analyst for one of my teams, Kungarna. But that was just one of his first teams. After Kungarna, he moved on to be an analyst for the Goats. And then after that, with Angry Titans, European Contenders Season 2 finalist. That's a pretty big accomplishment for a 15-year-old analyst. Oh, and also, he's working with Team Canada right now for the World Cup as their analyst. It's quite the resume to have as a 15-year-old, and I can see why Atlanta wanted to pick him up. He might be young, but he is definitely experienced, and I do think he adds a lot to this roster. So looking at the management and coaches as a whole, I'd say Atlanta definitely has an experienced bunch. I think if they find the right players with good mindsets and willingness to improve, this staff could easily lead a team to the playoffs. So now that we know the full management, let's move on and talk about the players. And their first two pickups so far in the offseason were Pakpo and Dako, both from the same Korean Contenders team, Element Mystic, where both of them pretty much spent their entire careers. We'll start off with the off-tank Dako. Dako started his career off in the amateur scene, playing for a couple random teams before he found his way on Element Mystic. And this was after Apex Season 4, leading into the Overwatch Contenders Korea first season. He got first place in the challenger scene in order to qualify for Season 1 of Korea Contenders. It's a little different for Pakpo. Element Mystic was his very first pro team, but he wasn't there from the start like Dako. He joined at the beginning of Season 1 Korea Contenders. He didn't go through the qualifier process, he just straight up played the very first season with them. And in this first season, Pakpo and Dako with their team Element Mystic had the best record after the group stage, finishing 5-0 in their group against teams like X6 Gaming, Metabellum, Kongdu Panthera, Blossom, and Meta Athena. And not only did they go 5-0, they also went 18-2, only dropping 2 maps out of all these sets. A pretty incredible feat, and many thought Element Mystic was going to be the favorite to win the whole entire tournament. Well, unfortunately for them, that did not happen. They lost in the very first round 3-2 against O2 Ardiant, who did eventually go to the finals and lose to X6 Gaming. So there is some playoff experience there for Dako and Pakpo. Some would say that they did choke because they were both rookies and was their very first season. And even though they choked, moving on to the second season, a lot of people still considered them one of the best teams, and they did prove this in their group, going 4-1 and 13-7 in maps overall, making them the first seed out of Group B against teams like O2 Ardiant, GC Busan, MVP Space, Seven, and Foxes. This season, they would make it further than the last. In the quarterfinals, they faced off against last season's champions, X6 Gaming, and took them out 3-2. Unfortunately though, the road for them stopped in the semifinals up against Runaway, where they lost to 1-3. And then Runaway went on to win the entire tournament, as we all know. Element Mystic definitely has some strong players, but a lot of people would say that Pakpo and Dako, specifically Dako, is one of their best players. And it doesn't stop there. A lot of people in the Korean community consider Dako the best off-tank outside of the Overwatch League, even better than Janu. So to be held to that high of a regard is pretty incredible, and I expect Dako and Pakpo both to be insane players for Atlanta. And I think this was a genius pickup by Atlanta, because picking up 2 players that already have existing synergy in the off-tank and main tank role worked out really well for most of the Season 1 Overwatch League teams. So these 2 players will be able to come into Atlanta already having previous synergy and understanding how to play with one of another. And it'll be much easier teaching their teammates that rather than having to learn together and then teach. And the fact that they're both world-class players makes this a super strong pickup for Atlanta, and I can definitely see them having the best tank lineup going into the Overwatch League, at least out of the expansion teams. So now that we've gone over the tanks, let's go over the DPS players, and let's start off with none other than Dafran. Now I know I already made a video recently on Dafran going over most of his past, but real quick just to refresh some memories, Dafran played for Selfless Gaming a year and a half ago. This was his first and only professional gaming team in all of Overwatch, and he immediately took them from a tier 2, tier 3 team straight to the top of tier 1, placing first in every single amateur tournament they played in, eventually moving on to the big pro tournaments where they went to the finals multiple weeks in a row, only falling to the best teams like Envy, Rogue, and Team Liquid. And we all know what happened. He eventually got in trouble and Blizzard banned him from Season 1 of Contenders, but eventually did come back 6 months later after the ban and after Season 1 of Overwatch League was starting, and built a very successful streaming career. Personally, he's one of the best players I ever played against. His aim is absolutely incredible, and I know this is a great pickup. As long as the management and coaching staff can keep him under control, he will be huge for this team. And now moving on to their second DPS player, we have Nalir, who comes from last night's Leftovers, playing under Sephi and Silence. He's had a very interesting Overwatch career. He's played for multiple teams over the past 3 years, but he never really broke out into the tier 1 scene. Throughout his entire existence in Overwatch, he played for Tier 2 team after Tier 2 team, Tornado Rocks, X Rocks, Golden Sausage, Rocket Esports, and then Last Night's Leftovers. Which on Last Night's Leftovers, the two biggest tournaments he ever played in was Contenders North America Season 1 and then Season 2. Now the fact that he's been around the scene for a very long time and never got a big break until now proves that he was hungry the entire time and stayed improving. And I most definitely think that Sefi saw something in him when he was coaching him over at LNL, and that's why he wanted to bring him over. Because, well, Nalir is the only player from Last Night's Leftovers who has been picked up by Atlanta. This means he must have been the most coachable, the most improved, and overall just the best player out of all of them. Now moving on to the very last DPS player, we have Erster, formerly of Lucky Future Zenith. Now Erster has some serious accolades and experience in Overwatch. Not only did he dominate the Chinese scene in Overwatch Contender Season 1 and 2, placing first place, he also dominated the Southeast Asian Pacific region, taking first place in their major tournament, the Overwatch Pacific Championship Season 2 and Season 1 with Ardian. And prior to that, he also competed in Overwatch Apex Season 3 with Mighty AOD. So this guy has so much overall experience. He's been a champion. He's played in 3 different regions. So there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that he can come over to the Overwatch League and be a fierce competitor. And honestly, I feel like he's going to be a gem, one of the best players in Season 2. What I see in him is kind of what I saw in Prophet leading up to Season 1. So I think this is an absolute massive acquisition for Team Atlanta, and you pair him with Nalir and Dafran, these guys are going to frag hard. And now moving on to their very last pickup, we have Kodak from Team Germany and formerly of Snakes. And I don't even need to tell most of you guys, I'm sure you already seen Germany versus France in the World Cup. He popped off. He was so clutch. He went head to head with Unco, and honestly, I have to admit it, he got the best of Unco in a best of 5 series in the World Cup, and he almost literally took down France single-handedly on Route 66. The guy's an absolute monster, and he has some solid experience, competing in Overwatch Contender Season 2 Europe with Snakes, getting 5th through 8th. And he also competed in Overwatch Contenders 2018 Season 1 Europe with Moasic Esports, and prior to that, he competed in Overwatch Contenders 2017 Season 0 with 1-2-3, where he got 2nd place, only losing to Team United, who was the best team in all of Europe at the time. So overall, he's very experienced, and he is incredibly deadly on that Zenyatta. And he is also capable of flexing over to Ana and Mercy. I definitely think he will be in the top half of flex supports moving into the 2nd season, and maybe even a top 5 Zenyatta. So I think he rounds out this roster very well. The only thing, as I said earlier, that they're missing so far to get a full comp is a main support player. They did previously offer Jesse, and he did turn them down in order to play for a more Korean team, but I still do believe that they have enough money and will be able to find the right player they need in order to make this roster one of the best in the league. They also even have more room to pick up some more substitutes, and I expect them to do that as well, because Sefi did build a really big roster for San Francisco going into Season 1. There's no reason he wouldn't do it again. So if you guys can't tell by now, I definitely think Atlanta is going to be one of the stronger teams going into Season 2, at least out of all the expansions. They've picked up solid players in every single role. I honestly see no position where they lack in right now besides obviously a main support, because they don't have one. If I had to guess, this team is definitely going to be pushing for the playoffs and maybe even going deep. If they can all come together and these coaches can really keep these players in line, I honestly see no reason why they wouldn't be a top competitor, sitting 4th to 8th in the standings throughout most of the season. So to answer the question, yes, Atlanta will be a very good team going into Season 2. Be sure to comment down below letting me know if you guys agree with me or disagree. How strong do you think Atlanta is? Do you like the players they've picked up? And if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, I am thinking of doing a series once all the teams' rosters are announced. How good is X team going to be in Overwatch League Season 2? So let me know if you guys want to see that series down below. Subscribe with the post notifications on to know when I drop a video every day. And that's going to be it, guys. Thank you for watching. I'm out of here. Peace.